It was shortly after 1 a.m. on January 26th that a call from a passerby reported flames visible on the rooftop of the southeast corner of the newly constructed Stake building. The fire burned the full length of the attic from the east side to the west. There was complete structure failure as the roof collapsed through the gymnasium and chapel. A time-lapse video showed the multiple hours it took to put the fire out. Now, nearly a month later, all that remains are the outside brick walls and the steeple where it landed when the roof caved in.
Whether you belong to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or not, it's adjacent to an icon, you know, in the temple of the church, and it's a church building, I think, and I would hope that any of us would take great pride and ownership in community gathering places such as places of worship.
It was reported that an accelerant detecting dog from the Utah State Fire Marshal alerted in 2 areas. However, the St. George Police Department, along with the ATF, are still trying to determine what or possibly even who is responsible for the fire. A $5,000 reward was offered for information shortly after, which is still being deemed as suspicious, awaiting test results.
I certainly hope that it wasn't, a crime of hate. I hope that we find out it was some terrible accident, but it looks suspicious, and so we've got to move on and be able to heal as a community.
Ironically, demolition crews began tearing down the remains of the church almost a year to the date from when the original Stake building was torn down to be replaced. The loss of this church impacts the entire community.
We have, a community house of worship that has been, torn down on purpose a year ago, and now due to fire and the total devastation is being torn down again. And it's hard. I think that's hard on our hearts, and for the whole community. These are not things we want to see happen.
As they watch the remains of the building being torn down, members of the ward who would have enjoyed going here in just a few months are saddened by the sudden loss of a church they would have called their home stake center.
Because it was just in full throttle being built, and all of a sudden it stops. It really hurts. It was such a beautiful building.
The interfaith community immediately reached out after hearing of the tragic loss.
Right away, our emphasis was on A, how do we pray, but B, how do we also send our concern, our condolences, and know that one of the amazing things that religious faith does for us is it reminds us we can rise out of the ashes. That's what's really powerful, and the LDS presence is going to be such that we recognize they will rebuild.
An email sent to the LDS Church from the Catholic community expressed thoughts, prayers, and concerns in wake of the fire. While the church wasn't able to provide information on the cost of the loss or whether the insurance would cover it, church spokesman Daniel Woodruff said they will rebuild using the same contractor. He said they recently learned the concrete slabs and foundation can be preserved. Framing is expected to begin in about 2 weeks, and reconstruction will take about 9 months.
It's a big waste for the whole church.
And this would have been your stake?
This would have been my stake. It will be eventually.
However, the ultimate cost of this fire is more emotional than the money and time it will take to rebuild.
Thank goodness no one was hurt. No one was killed. This church was very close to adjoining homes, and it could have been much worse.
Police are still asking for anyone who may know anything to come forward. In St. George, Melissa Anderson, Community Education News.